So we're here with Mike. We have ridden him 13 times now. Each ride has been in a hackamore, training hackamore. And it's time to introduce him to the Snaffle. Probably won't ride him in it for a while, but want him to at least learn to carry it. So today I'm going to see about slipping that into his mouth, see if we can get him to accept that, and just leave him out here for a little while to chew on it and think about it and get used to it. So he's out here. I've got my Snaffle just hung over my shoulder here. We're going to do another segment. I don't know what the sequence will be, but there will be, or has been, a segment on choices of headgear. And this is my favorite Snaffle to start colts in. It's something that Chris Cox came up with. It's a fixed ring. The rings don't rotate, so it's more of a side pull. It's virtually impossible to pull through a horse's mouth, which makes it very nice. It's got some shape, so it wraps around the horse's mouth on the inside, and it makes it a lot more comfortable, a lot less severe, frankly, than a more straight Snaffle bit. It's made out of sweet iron, or it's basically a low carbon tool grade steel that has a good taste to it. It rusts. They actually like the taste of rust. I will tell you that when I had one of these that hadn't been used in a while, I put my tongue on it. It didn't taste bad. This one was just in a horse, so I think I'll decline to do that again today. But it does have sort of a sweet taste. So what we're going to do is we're going to get him used to the idea of something going in his mouth. I haven't done this at all with him. So this is kind of happening live, and we'll see how it goes. He may not like it. I would predict if he's going to do anything when I go to put the Snaffle on, he's going to take his head that way. That's his default, is just take his head away. So I'm going to be very aware as I work with him to keep his head just ever so slightly to the left of center. So I'm just going to reach down there, work my way into his mouth, and that's enough. Work my way into his mouth, put my thumb on his tongue, let him get the feel of something in there. Let him get used to the idea that my thumb is going to go in there and that he can open his mouth when I do. You can tell that he's pretty trusting and his jaw isn't clamped shut. Some horses who are nervous, it's the opposite of what you hear where you want your horse to lick and chew. A lot of nervous horses will clamp their mouths shut, which makes putting a bridle on all the more challenging. So he's pretty active with his mouth right there, and he's letting me put my thumb in there no problem. Want to make sure I can do it on both sides. Not that I'm going to be bridling him from this side, but that bit is going to be on his tongue in that side. Now, of course, there's a nice big space there with no teeth. Just make darn sure you stay in that space, because they don't even have to bear down much, and you get a pretty well mashed thumb. Been there, don't want to go there again. So what I'll do is I'll take this rope and I'll introduce that to his mouth, because it's flexible and it's easy to handle. It's not attached to a headstall, and I just slip it in his mouth. And I'll let him chew on it. I keep it there in that intradental space because good lead ropes aren't cheap. So he can gum it all he wants, but I don't want him to chew on it. I'll do the same thing a couple of times. I'll just reach up there, put my thumb in, tickle his tongue, introduce that rope, and I'm going to put my thumb back in there to make sure that this comes out nicely. Going to give him a minute to cogitate and ruminate on that. You know, we can get our to-do list going along real well, and then we get a little bit ahead of ourselves, and they're not ready yet. I just want to make sure he can chew there for a minute, think about how all that tastes, see if this is going to get better, not worse. See, you can just slip that in there. There we go. Now here is one unfortunate thing about putting a snaffle bit on, or any bit on for the first time, is I have no clear idea of exactly what size or what adjustment this should be set at. My best recollection is I last used this on a relatively small horse, so I've let it out several holes. I will default to having it too loose, I hope, instead of too tight, because it's uncomfortable if it's too tight. Now see that little move there? That's his default resistance, is to take his head off to the right. What I could do, but I'd prefer not to, is to leave a halter on. I do think it affects the way the snaffle bit fits, and just from an aesthetic point of view, it's kind of like walking out of the bathroom with toilet paper stuck to your shoe. I just hate to see a horse going along with a halter under the bridle. Nothing wrong with it, except it just isn't aesthetically pleasing. So I'm just going to remind him that I still have this rope around his neck. I'm going to put this out of the way. And you can see that tendency to stretch over to the right. So I'm going to just sort of cradle him around here to the left. See if he can give that up a little bit. Yeah. See, he's had this done. He's learned to wrap around me a little. He's learned that he's safe in here. Now I'm going to betray him just a little bit and stick a piece of cold iron in his mouth. But he'll learn quick enough that it doesn't hurt. So I'm just going to take my hand up here, and I'm going to position this in such a way that it's going to be easy to put in his mouth. Going to get that in shape, and I'm going to put my thumb in there. Okay, and I'm not going to thrust that in his mouth. I need to be on target, and there we go. It's kind of a balancing act, because you don't want to just jam it in his mouth, but you can't mess around there too much. Now, I overestimated the size of this poor guy's head, so you see that he's got that down. He's about ready to spit it out, but we'll get that fixed pretty quick. So here's a big area that people talk about, is the right adjustment for your bit. How many wrinkles do you have? I've got to confess, I must be wrinkle impaired, because I'll look down there and I won't even necessarily see how many. You know, some horses just seem to have wrinkly mouths, others don't. So what I do is I'm going to draw this up. Then I'm going to do something so simple that it seems silly. I'm just going to go up here, right up here to the top, and if I can get a couple of fingers under that, you're not too far wrong. That's still a little bit long. One thing that I routinely do is, these headstalls come through with pre-punched holes, and I go along and I punch a hole in between each hole, and then I have adjustments of about maybe 3/8 of an inch, and it just makes it a whole lot better. So you'll notice that he is chewing on that, which is normal. He's also got enough slack there that that bit actually, it's not going to get down against his teeth, because there's a fair amount of space there, but he's going to have to learn to pick it up himself and hold it. So they almost suck on the bit. But if you have it cinched up real tight, if you had it up tight like that, and you had those theoretical wrinkles that I can't see in the corner of his mouth, you probably would be holding it up for him, and you'd also be keeping pressure on him the whole darn time. So why put that meaningless, unintentional pressure on him and dull him? Just let him learn to pick it up and have a little bit of slack there to adjust it within his own mouth as he sees fit. So I think we're okay on adjustment. You could make an argument that it should be a little longer, but I think we're okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to experiment with a hole longer and see if I like that better. Sorry about getting in the middle of the shot there. And see, that just, you can tell that's going to have too much slack. So I think we were about right before. You go up here, you got enough space there to get a couple fingers under, and you're pretty good. I'll tuck in the loose end, and I'll let him walk around and chomp on that for a while. Now, it is true that when you adjust that bit a little bit longer, as I prefer to do, and a lot of people prefer to do, they can get their tongue over the bit. But you know, they can also get it back where it belongs. And after they do that a time or two, they don't like it. Now, if you have the bit pulled up real tight and they get their tongue over it, it's that much harder for them to get it back where it belongs. So I'll sort of accept the fact that it's certainly possible he could get his tongue over the bit. And if I see him do that, I may even help him get out of it. But if I'm having a cup of coffee up at the house and I come back, he may have had his tongue over the bit 2 or 3 times, but rarely does it stay there. I don't think I've ever seen that happen. Not impossible, but it's a chance worth taking. So there he is. He's working that snaffle. Nothing unusual about that. Here's another thing I like about this bit. See, if you had a ring that flexed as they normally do, there'd be that much more movement. So he has fewer moving parts. He's going to play with that where it's in his mouth. He won't have it flopping around on the outside. All in all, I think that's a good way to have that bit set up. So I'm just going to leave him to his own devices to think this through, and when I come back out in about an hour or so, I'm going to bet that his mouth is a lot quieter. I'll report back later. Till then, see you next time.